Hey guys, tonight we're ditching the horoscope columns and the vague feel-good predictions. Instead, we're diving headfirst into the real stories behind the Zodiac, the ancient, tangled, and often brutally messed up myths that the Greeks and others literally pinned to the stars. This isn't about what your sign says you'll do next Tuesday. It's about why a crab, a pair of twins, and a guy pouring water are frozen in the night sky in the first place. Forget the serene, spinning astrological wheel you might imagine. What's actually above us is a chaotic gallery of betrayal's last stands and desperate rescues, a cosmic scrapbook written in starlight. If you've ever gone outside on a night when the air is so crisp, the stars look like they've been punched through black velvet, you've felt it. That unshakable pull to look up and search for shapes. The ancients called this practice catasterism, the art of placing stories into the heavens. They weren't just looking for pretty patterns. They were hunting for meaning for pieces of themselves scattered across the black vault above. To them, these weren't distant balls of burning gas. They were memories, warnings, and promises, frozen moments, from stories too big to fit on the earth alone. And let's be real, you probably wouldn't survive the origins of your own sign. These constellations are souvenirs from moments of sheer desperation, divine vengeance, and catastrophic love affairs. They exist because someone usually immortal met a fate so wild or so horrifying that the gods decided to make it a permanent fixture. It was both a gift and a sentence, a kind of immortality that freezes you forever in the pose of your most defining and often most humiliating moment. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Whether you're settling down for the night or just looking for a quiet escape into the past, I'm glad you're here. Aries, the golden rescue and the cost of survival. We're starting this twisted tour with Aries the ram. But the story doesn't begin in the stars. It starts on the ground, in a world where a child's life could be bent or broken by the word of an oracle, and where the gods moved their pieces on the board of mortal affairs without a whisper of apology. To understand why a ram shines at the head of the Zodiac, we have to descend into a web of family rivalry, a stepmother's spite, and a rescue that feels less like a triumph and more like a single breath stolen before drowning. The kingdom of Boeotia was supposed to be a place of order, but like any place where gods and mortals mix, it was a powder keg. King Athamas had a wife, the cloud nymph Nephele, a beautiful and ethereal creature, literally created by Hera. But as often happens, his eye wandered to a mortal woman named Ino, whose ambition was as sharp as her features. Nephele's place in the palace crumbled faster than a sandcastle at high tide. Ino saw Nephele's children, Phrixus and Helle, not as innocent kids, but as obstacles in the path of her own son's rise to power. And so, she hatched a plan that was as patient as it was ruthless. She didn't go for a simple poisoning or a convenient accident. No, her scheme was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. First, she secretly spoiled the kingdom's seed grain before it could be planted. Can you imagine the slow, dawning horror? The crops fail. The people grow desperate. Hunger tightens its grip on the land. Panic spreads. Naturally, the king sends to the oracle at Delphi for guidance. This was Ino's moment. She bribed the messengers a handful of coins, a promise of power, and they returned not with a divine solution, but with a fabricated prophecy of pure horror. The famine would only end, they declared, if the king sacrificed his own son, Phrixus, to the gods. The machinery of doom began to turn. The air, thick with the smell of fear and cheap incense, hung heavy around the altar. Phrixus, just a boy, stood there, the cold stone beneath his feet, the priest's knife ready. The crowd was hushed, a mixture of morbid curiosity and terrified belief. But the gods, or at least one of them, had other plans. Nephili, far from powerless in her despair, called upon a miraculous creature to intervene. This wasn't just any ram. This was Chrysomalos, a beast with fleece spun from liquid gold and wings strong enough to carry the weight of 2 terrified children. A gift from Poseidon, or maybe Hermes depending on which drunk bard you asked it, was the mythical equivalent of a divine muscle car arriving in the nick of time. Its sudden appearance on the altar was so shocking, so blindingly radiant, that the priests dropped their knives and the crowd stumbled back in awe. The ram knelt. No time for explanations. Phrixus and his sister Helle scrambled onto its broad golden back, and with a surge of muscle and a gust of wind that tore at their clothes, it leapt into the sky. This wasn't a leisurely ascent to glory. It was a desperate, terrifying flight for survival. Imagine the roar of the sea below them, the dizzying glitter of the sun on the waves as they left everything they knew behind. But the danger wasn't over. As they crossed the narrow strait between continents, Helle, perhaps overcome by vertigo, perhaps just too weak to hold on, lost her grip. She slipped from the ram's back and fell into the churning waters below. That place would forever be known as the Hellespont, the Sea of Hele Adiming, carved into maps as a permanent reminder that even in stories with divine intervention, not everyone gets saved. Alone, and clinging to the ram's golden fleece, Phrixus was carried the rest of the way to the distant land of Colchis. He was received with unexpected generosity by King Aeetes, but the trauma of his journey, the loss of his sister, it all curdled into a strange, grim gratitude. In a move that's baffling to modern sensibilities, he sacrificed the golden ram, the very creature that had saved him to Zeus, as a thank you. The ram's impossibly radiant fleece was then hung in a sacred grove guarded by a dragon that never slept. It would sit there, a beacon of immense power and tragic origins, until it one day lured a new generation of heroes, Jason and his Argonauts, into their own perilous tale. The Greeks believed Zeus set the ram among the constellations to honor its courage. But the truth in the telling is so much more complicated. Aries is not a simple story of salvation. It's a story of a sister's drowning, a survivor's guilt, and the sacrifice of the loyal rescuer. It's a reminder that rescue often comes at a cost, that survival is never without its debts, and that the heavens remember both the shining moments and the long dark shadows they cast. Taurus, the abduction, and the shape of power. So we leave the golden ram, ascending to its starry fate. A savior sacrificed its fleece, destined to become another man's problem. The zodiac wheel turns, and now we find ourselves not in a moment of desperate flight, but in a deceptively peaceful meadow on the Phoenician coast. This is where the story of Taurus begins, and it's a masterclass in divine deception, a predator's patience that makes your skin crawl. The Phoenician princess Europa was the daughter of King Agenor, and her beauty wasn't the loud, obvious kind that stops a room. It was quieter, more potent. It carried its own weather, a presence that pulled the eye without effort and made the world around her feel briefly more alive. She lived by the shore, in a land of warm winds and salt air, and it was there, while gathering flowers with her companions in a meadow that spilled down toward the beach, that her story was hijacked for eternity. Zeus, looking down from Olympus, saw her. And for the king of the gods, this wasn't a moment of contemplation or weighed desire. It was a decision made with the certainty of a storm rolling toward the shore. He must have her. But Europa was a mortal princess with a guarded life, and Zeus knew his usual bag of tricks. The eagle, the swan, the shower of gold wouldn't suffice here. He needed a new form, one of such impossible beauty and gentle calm that it would disarm even the most wary. So he reshaped himself, becoming a bull. Not just any bull. A bull so stunning it would make a statue blink. His hide shone as if carved from polished moonlight, his horns curved like a master craftsman's perfect work, and his eyes held a strange deep gentleness that completely belied the godly force coiled within. He wandered into the king's herds, a supernatural stranger, blending in on the edge of the meadow waiting. Europa noticed him first for his stillness. While the other cattle moved and tore at the grass, this bull seemed to be watching her patient, unthreatening. It was the ultimate trap, laid with divine precision. She reached out a hand, and when he didn't shy away, her fingers brushed the warm, velvety softness of his muzzle. Her companions laughed, drawing closer, marveling at this calm creature, who allowed them to drape flowers around his powerful neck and weave garlands between his perfect horns. His breathing was slow, deep, the way the sea breathes before a wave. And when Europa, giggling and emboldened, climbed onto his broad back, it felt no more dangerous than sitting on a sun-warmed stone. She could not have known she had already crossed the threshold into myth. The moment she settled, the bull moved. But not with the short, placid steps of a grazing beast. This was a sudden, powerful surge toward the shore. The girls shouted, startled, as his hooves pounded across the sand, and before they could even process what was happening, he plunged into the surf. The sea rose around them in great sprays of white foam, but the bull did not falter. He struck out into the open water with the strength of something made for both land and sea. Europa clung to his neck, the garlands slipping into the waves, her eyes stung by the salt wind as the coastline of her home, her life dwindled to a smudge behind her. This is a kidnapping written as a surreal cruise. Dolphins appeared in their wake, leaping in arcs as if escorting royalty. The water shifted from coastal green to the deep, impossible violet of the open Mediterranean. They traveled like this for what felt like an eternity, the bull's great body cutting through the waves, the sun shifting overhead, the silence broken only by the rush of water and the sound of her own terrified breath. Finally, an unfamiliar shore rose ahead, the island of Crete, fragrant with cypress and pine. And here, on solid ground again, the beautiful trap sprung its final mechanism. The white hide began to dissolve, the form melting and reshaping into the figure of Zeus, his eyes no longer gentle but burning with the victory of possession. On that Cretan shore, Europa's life was altered beyond recognition. She became the mother of 3 sons, among them Minos, who would one day rule Crete and build the labyrinth that held the Minotaur. But the Greeks, in a fascinating twist, did not fix the image of the god or the abducted woman in the sky. They fixed the form of the animal, the bull, head lowered in an eternal charge, the stars marking the curve of its horns and the immense breadth of its shoulders, the rest of its body fading into darkness, as if forever emerging from the sea. Taurus was never just a pretty picture. Its return to the sky was a signal, a reminder, and a declaration all at once. It rose in the seasons when the earth was waking from winter's quiet, when pastures filled with the sound of animals grazing, when plows bit into the soil. The bull was the sign of fertility, of strength, returning to the fields of the raw, essential power that tilled and sustained life. Its brightest star, the warm red glow of Aldebaran, marks the bull's eye, and the cluster of the Pleiades shimmers near its shoulder like a jeweled cloak. These weren't just ornaments. They were practical markers by which sailors timed their voyages and farmers judged their planting. In a world without mechanical clocks, these stars were the living hands of the year's great dial. But the bull's meaning, like all of these signs, is layered. The Greeks, never ones to discard a good story, let Taurus carry traces of other older tales. Some saw in its horns the reflection of the Cretan bull, the same insane beast Heracles was sent to capture as one of his labors. Others found in its massive form the shadow of the very bull that Pasiphae, cursed by Poseidon, was made to desire the act that brought the Minotaur into the world. The bull in the sky was the perfected image, the archetype, the eternal beast that never aged, never weakened, never bowed to the plow. To place it in the heavens was to strip away the dust and sweat of the earthly animal and leave only the pure, terrifying power, the force that could cross seas with a girl on its back, that could bear a god's curses, that could anchor the turning of the year itself. Gemini, the bond that cheated death. From the raw, possessive power of the bull, we turn now to a story not of force, but of fidelity, to a bond so fierce it cheated death itself. This is the origin of Gemini the twins, and it's a story that cuts to the very heart of the Greek idea of kinship honor and what we're willing to sacrifice for the people we love. Our story begins, like so many messy myths do, with a complicated family tree in Sparta. Their mother, Queen Leda, was known across the Aegean not just for her beauty, but for the bizarre, divided fate of her children. In one night, she was visited by two fathers, her mortal husband, King Tyndareus, and Zeus, who arrived in the form of a swan. From this doubly divine union, two sets of twins were born. Helen, yes, the Helen of Troy, and Pollux or Polydeuces were the children of Zeus, touched with the spark of immortality. Their siblings, Castor and Clytemnestra, were born of Tyndareus, entirely mortal. This was a family whose bloodline was a tangled web of fate before any of them had even taken their first steps. Castor and Pollux grew up inseparable. They were the ultimate power duo. They trained in the noble arts, wrestling, hunting, taming horses, the tactics of war, and each boy's skill perfectly complemented the others. Castor was famed for his mastery with horses, his balance and precision with a spear. Pollux was unmatched in boxing, his fists carrying the weight of his divine blood. Together, they were an unstoppable partnership, a legend that spread far beyond the borders of Sparta. Poets sang of their exploits. Sailors caught in sudden Mediterranean squalls would call on them for protection, swearing they saw the brothers' figures appear in the stormlight, guiding their ships to safety. But no mortal life, no matter how gifted, is free from the petty quarrels that plague men. The brothers became entangled in a dispute over cattle or women, depending on the teller, with their cousins Idas and Lynceus. It was a matter of pride and possession, two pairs of warriors convinced of their own right, unwilling to yield. The quarrel swelled from words into violence. Spears flew. And in the clash that followed, the mortal brother, Castor, was struck down. His body fell, not as a hero in the heat of victory, but as a brother watching his own life slip into the shadows. Pollux fought on with a divinely fueled rage until his enemies lay dead or scattered. But when the dust settled, he found no comfort in his survival. Standing over Castor's body, Pollux felt the full, cruel weight of the immortality he carried. It was a gift he had never asked for, and now it felt like a life sentence. What use was eternal life when half of himself was gone? He didn't pray to Zeus as a worshiper, making a plea to a distant god. He turned to him as a son speaking to a father, and he begged not for Castor's resurrection, but for something more profound, to share his own immortality. He would rather spend half his existence in the gloom of the underworld than an eternity in the sunlight without his brother. And Zeus, in a rare moment of contractual grace, granted the request. The brothers would never be wholly separated again. They would spend one day among the gods in the golden halls of Olympus, and the next in the dark of Hades among the shades. In other versions, Zeus simply raised them together into the night sky, fixing their likenesses side by side where no blade could ever part them again. The stars of Gemini became their eternal likeness, two bright points standing close in the darkness, each carrying the memory of the other. To the Greeks, they were proof that devotion could overcome the finality of death, that a bond forged in life might hold fast even beyond the grave. The sight of those twin stars rising was a reminder of a vow kept at the highest cost, a loyalty that neither war, nor pride, nor the will of the gods could undo. This reputation wasn't just pretty poetry, it was earned. Their cult spread like wildfire, especially among those who lived and died by partnership. In Rome, they were revered with a massive temple in the Forum. Young men of the equestrian order would ride 2 by 2 in an annual procession, a river of bronze and discipline flowing through the streets, giving thanks for the brotherhood that keeps formations from breaking and panic from spreading. Sailors knew them as the saviors who appeared as St. Elmo's fire, that eerie blue glow that crackles along the masts and rigging during a storm. It's a cold electrical flame that doesn't burn, a phenomenon that feels utterly supernatural. To a crew, in a hard blow, seeing those twin lights on the mast was a physical sign that the Dioscuri had stepped aboard, that loyalty itself had arrived to see them home. It turned the heart from calculation to gratitude. Their myth carries a haunting precision. Their immortality isn't a simple blissful state. It's a bargain, a rhythm of alternating sunlight and shadow, a procession of mornings and midnights where companionship is preserved at the cost of eternal rest. It's as if the sky itself were asked to alternate between feast and funeral so that a single simple vow could remain intact. This is why the sight of their stars feels like more than just reassurance. It feels like an instruction, a reminder that the best pledges complicate a life rather than simplifying it, that the meaning of a name endures only so far as someone is willing to pay for it with their days, their nights, and their very breath. Cancer, the pinch that earned the sky. From the sacred soul, deep bond of the twins, we descend now into a place of rot and futility. We're heading into the swamp. This is where our next story unfolds, and it's a glorious, pathetic lesson in what it takes to earn a place in the heavens. It's not always about winning. Sometimes it's just about showing up and getting utterly crushed for your trouble. This is the story of Cancer the Crab, and it is the Zodiac's greatest underdog story. The scene is the marshland at Lerna. This isn't a place of beauty. The ground breathes with a sickly humidity, the water stinks of decay, and reeds rattle in small, nervous winds. Pools reflect a gray sky that refuses to open. This is the den of the Hydra, a monstrous serpent with 9 or 50 or 1,000, who's counting venomous heads. And this is the setting for Heracles' second labor. He arrives not as a gleaming hero, but as a man stepping into a nightmare, armed with a club of sword, and followed by his nephew Iolaus, who carries a cart and, crucially, a torch. They move as men who know the air itself is against them. The swamp swallows their steps. Frogs fall silent. Even the birds draw back from the smell of old blood. Heracles finds the Hydra not by sight, but by sound, a low rolling hiss over the water. Then a surge. 9 heads lift like black lilies, opening eyes burning with a low, malevolent light. Teeth show in a wet grin. Heracles stands his ground and strikes. One neck breaks under his club. The head drops into the weeds. And then the horror begins. The stump doesn't bleed. It blossoms. 2 new heads sprout where one was lost. He learns the lesson fast, but that just means the nightmare accelerates. He strikes again and again. The marsh fills with the sound of wood on bone, a sickening percussion where every blow breeds 2 more snapping, hissing mouths. The creature moves, with a cold, patient intelligence sliding across the mud, testing his line, forcing him back. This is where strategy is born from sheer desperation. Heracles gives ground to firmer soil and calls to Iolaus. They fall into a grim, brutal rhythm. Heracles pins a neck with his knee and hacks it through with his sword. Iolaus is there instantly, with the torch searing the bleeding stump shut with a sizzle and a bitter scream of burned flesh. Cut, burn, step, breathe. It's ugly, methodical, and utterly exhausting. The Hydra thrashes, tearing up roots, water slapping the bank's mud, flying into the sky. Sweat blinds the hero. Smoke claws his throat, but he does not stop. And this is when Hera, who carries a long, bitter hatred for Heracles, decides to stack the deck. She doesn't send another monster. She doesn't need to. She sends a crab. Not a giant kaiju-sized crustacean, just a crab. Its name is Karkanos. It crawls from the black water with a shell like a broken shield, moving sideways with a deliberate, calm stupidity. It has one directive: distract him. It finds the hero's ankle and clamps down. Chitin bites into flesh. It's not a mortal wound. It's a nuisance, a pinprick of pain at the worst possible moment. Heracles staggers in the mud, his guard dropping for a single crucial second. The Hydra lunges. A jaw closes on his shoulder. The club shudders in his grip. Infuriated, Heracles looks down through the smoke and blood and sees this ridiculous creature, this absolute nobody of the animal kingdom, clinging to him with every ounce of its being, as if it could drag a demigod under by will alone. And in a fit of pure, unadulterated annoyance, he shifts his weight and drives his heel down. The shell cracks with a flat, pathetic report. A second blow ends the movement. The crab folds into the mud and slides back toward the water like a broken pot. It was a useless, failed, stupid little attack. It changed nothing. The battle ran its course. Heracles and Iolaus finished their gruesome work cut and burned the Hydra to its last immortal head, which they buried under a heavy rock. The swamp settled back into its rotten silence, but Hera, watching from on high, refused to waste the gesture. The crab had done what it could. It had obeyed. It had entered a fight that belonged to beings far larger and more important than itself, and it had died without a second thought. And that, in the twisted logic of the gods, was enough. So she fixed its small, broken shape among the stars, not as a grand constellation, but as a faint scatter of lights hard to find unless you already know where to look. The heavens hold the record of the pinch on the ankle and the heel that crushed it. The marsh would forget, the sky would not. Cancer rises with the summer solstice, the point where the sun seems to pause at its highest peak before beginning its long fall. The Greeks saw the crab faint creeping sideways motion in the stars as a perfect symbol for this celestial hesitation, as if the sky itself had to shift its weight before changing course. In a firmament crowded with heroes and roaring monsters, Cancer keeps a small, quiet room. And that is its power. It's a hinge. Farmers and sailors learn to read its faint stars by feel as much as by sight. Near its heart hangs a pale fuzzy patch the Greeks called the Fatni, the manger. Two dim stars, a Celis borealis and a Celis australis, the northern and southern donkey, graze at its edge. Shepherds had a saying if the manger blurred on a clear night rain was coming. For pilots, on the stern of a ship, that faint blur was a warning to shorten sail. This is the essence of Cancer. It's not a sign of glorious victory. It's a sign marked by obedience rather than success. Its stars don't blaze like the heart of the scorpion or the eye of the bull. They hang like a memory spoken under the breath. Some efforts don't finish a story. They just mark it. A grip on an ankle. A bruise that throbs the next day. A token granted by a queen who counts loyalty even when the battlefield belongs to someone else. Leo, the invulnerable, fear, and the strength of patience. From the damp, feudal squalor of the swamp, we now travel to the dry, sun-baked hills west of Mycenae. The air here is thin. The wind cuts low through the scrub, and the earth is tough. This is the domain of the Nemean lion, and its story is a masterclass in sheer terrifying power meeting unstoppable force. This is the origin of Leo, and it redefines what it means to be strong. The Nemean lion wasn't just a predator. It was a natural disaster with fur. It had come down from its ravine and taken the habit of killing at the edge of daylight. It didn't just hunt, it practiced. It dragged oxen from their yokes with casual strength. It broke down doors with a lazy shove of one forepaw. It left tracks in the dust that looked like bowls had been pressed there by a giant's hand. Stories of it moved faster than carts. People spoke about it in the hushed, rationed tones of those who have learned to live with a constant low-grade terror. It lives in a cave with two mouths. It cannot be cut. It takes spears as thorns. It will not leave a body whole. King Eurystheus, safe in his hall at Tiryns, heard these reports and saw not a terror, but an opportunity, a problem that could earn him the credit of a solution without requiring him to get his own hands dirty. Heracles returned from exile, and disturbingly powerful, was the perfect tool. The king set the first labor with a tone of bored official calm. Go to Nemea, find the animal, remove it from the earth. No speech about honor, no talk of glory, just a line of instruction and the weight of a seal pressed into wax. Heracles accepted the task as a man accepts a debt he cannot refuse. He took his bow, his quiver, and a club cut from wild olive wood. He walked out of the gate before sunrise and did not look back. The country he entered smelled of crushed thyme and dust. He found the lion's work. Before he found the lion, a carcass of a cow torn where the neck meets the shoulder. There were no bite marks at the bone. The hide was peeled back as easily as a blanket. Heracles understood immediately. This beast did not kill from hunger alone. It killed to learn the feeling of resistance. He met the lion on a shelf of rock where the road narrows. The beast stepped into view with the same calm that had allowed it to stroll into farmhouse yards. It was larger than the stories had measured. The muscle was clean and defined a bronze wave that caught the sun and threw it back. Its eyes didn't burn with rage. They watched with the cold, calculating focus of a craftsman evaluating a tool. Heracles took his stance and fired. The bow bent, the string spoke, the arrow struck the shoulder and bounced off as if it had struck a wall of hammered metal. A second shaft to the ribs. The same refusal. A third at the throat where the flesh is thinnest. The shaft shattered into driftwood. The animal blinked once and took a slow, rolling step forward. In that moment, Heracles understood the terms of this fight. Distance offered no leverage. This would not be a battle of skill, but of raw, close-quarters will. He dropped the bow. The olive wood club felt good in his hand. It had a little spring to it. But he knew before he even swung that bone and hide, and the god-born toughness of the creature would not yield to a blow alone. He drove the lion back from the shelf into broken ground, where thorns and rocks made a tight ring. The beast changed its rhythm, moving with a low gliding motion that sent up veils of dust. It fainted right then, came straight in. The club met its skull, with a sound like a door slammed against stone. The lion spun and struck with a forepaw that moved in a blur. The blow didn't cut. It lifted Heracles from his feet and threw him into brush that tore at his arms. This was the truth of the Nemean lion. Its power was absolute, its confidence unshakable. It didn't press the attack immediately. It watched, as if confirming the measure of the man who had come to end it. Heracles knew then he had to change the battlefield. He retreated, studying the land, and found the lion's den, a pocket in the limestone, with two mouths set at an angle to each other. This was the source of its patience. Anything cornered at one exit could slip out the other. So Heracles, the brawniest of heroes, became a tactician. He cut saplings and dragged stones, building a barricade at one opening until a man would need a friend to clear it. He left a narrow gap at the other. The work was slow, sweaty under a shifting sun. The silence of the valley deepened in the hour before dusk, and then with no roar at all, the lion came. It slipped through the gap like water and hung for an instant between rock and light. Heracles stepped into it. The club was useless in the tight space. He dropped the wood and reached for the mane with both hands. The hair felt like rope soaked in oil. The heat of the body was a furnace contained in skin. The animal turned and struck for his throat. He caught the jaw in the crook of his forearm and felt teeth that could cut bronze grind against muscle. He shifted his weight, drove a knee under the ribs to crush its breath. The cave took the sound of the struggle, the grunts, the snarls, the impact of bodies on stone, and returned it as a low, brutal drum. Dust rose and fell. Pebbles skittered in small avalanches. This was not the glorious combat of song. This was ugly, exhausting work. Strength did the work and then kept doing it for minutes that felt like a season. The forepaws clawed at his back, making furrows that burned. And then finally, the great jaw slackened. The heat ran out of the body, the way water runs from a cracked jar. He had won. But then came the second labor, skinning it. The hide that no blade could pierce. Remembering the simplest truth, a thing made beyond the ordinary might only answer to itself, he knelt and took one of the lion's own claws. He worked it along a seam where the belly hangs soft. The skin parted with a low, yielding sound, a surrender that belongs to the moment an impossible tool meets its purpose. He stripped the hide with the practiced care of a man who had dressed animals since boyhood. When he emerged from the cave at evening, the Nemean lion's pelt was on his shoulders. The jaw settled over his brow like a crown, the fangs framing his face. The smell of the cave and the beast wrapped around him. He returned to Tyrants, not with a shout of victory, but with a tired steadiness that spoke the truth better than any boast. The herald of King Eurystheus met him at the outer field and would not come closer than a safe span of paces. The king himself, hearing the news, walked to his threshold, took one look at the figure with the lion's mask growing larger in the courtyard, and promptly turned and hid in a giant storage jar. A comical, terrified gesture that says everything about the aura of power Heracles now carried. The constellation Leo was set in the sky by Zeus to mark the end of this terror. But it's not the head of a trophy on a wall. It's the image of the beast itself, forever ready to move. It teaches a specific kind of law, that force must learn to be patient and then exact. That a city must learn to bar the easy door and steer danger into a place where courage can work in close. That a man who has taken a beast by the throat does not have to raise his voice. He can simply put on the skin and walk home at dusk while the hills hold their breath. Virgo, the justice that walked away. From the raw physical struggle of the lion, we now step onto the threshing floor. The air here is hazy thick with the first dust of grain that hangs like smoke. The sound is a dry, rhythmic crackle of husks under wooden sledges. Men walk in a circle singing to keep the rhythm. Women bend at baskets, lifting clean kernels with quick, practiced wrists. Children chase chaff as it rides a small wind. For an hour, the village feels secure. Bread will come. Oil will come. The jar in the corner will not echo emptily when you strike it. And in this hour of fragile, hard-won order, the Greeks placed a quiet figure beside the workers. This is the story of Virgo, and it is the most heartbreaking story in the Zodiac, the story of the justice that walked away. They called her Astrea in one telling and Dyke in another. She was the daughter of Themis' divine law, or perhaps a child of the dawn and the stars. But her essence was always the same justice, in the shape of a person, a maiden, with the cool steadiness of a well in August. She holds a single ear of wheat. She watches the measure in a woman's scoop. She hears the old men argue about a boundary stone and waits to speak until they fall quiet. She is not a ruler. She is a witness, a guardian of the mundane fairness that lets a society function. The world she loved soured slowly. The stories give us the stages because people understand a slow decline better than a sudden collapse. First, the Golden Age with its open doors and shared bounty. Then the Silver Age with its longer nights and whispered suspicions. Then the Bronze Age, where men first wore armor that answered anger too quickly. And then the age that needs no pretty name, the Iron Age. The rot showed in the small things first. Guests were turned away at doorways and told to find their own water. Tables bore bite marks where hands had fought over the last piece of cheese. In the courts, the tired gave up arguing with the loud. Oaths were taken with a casual voice. Fields were cut in the dark one row too far into a neighbor's plot. A widow's goat went missing and came back slaughtered in another man's pot. The gods watched from their high rooms and withdrew one by one, like household statues being packed into chests for a move. But Astrea stayed. She stood in porches with a hand on the lintel and told men to put the knife away. She stood by wells and reminded children to wait their turn. She stood at the edge of markets where weights had been ground thin and asked the seller to place one more fig on the plate. And for a while it worked. The knife went back into the belt. The child stepped aside. The seller nodded and added the fig. Those small victories held her in place. She walked the roads, between towns slept under vines, and watched the same moon the reapers watched. But then came the days when the knife rose anyway. When the child pushed forward and scooped water with both hands until the shared trough was muddied. When the seller laughed and kept the change. She began to know the sound of a life bending past repair. It's a simple, quiet thing. A voice grows flat. A face fixes in an expression that does not soften. People stopped looking at the witness. They began talking over her shoulder as if she were a pillar, a piece of the scenery. She stayed until that sound, that flatness lived everywhere she turned, even in rooms where bread had been blessed for 50 years, and everyone knew the names that should not be spoken in anger. The stories say she was the last of the immortals who loved humanity to walk away. There was no grand, thundering exit. It was a steady, dignified leaving. A woman who knew how to make an exit that preserves what little dignity remains. She chose the dirt road that runs under plane trees. She passed altars where smoke went up in thin, neglected columns and did not pause to fold the ash. She left behind the pottery districts where clay dust sits forever in the wrinkles of the knuckles. She crossed the long bridges where the river looks like hammered bronze at evening. She turned once in a barley field and watched gleaners pick the corners a second time in silence. She did not speak. She simply lifted the single ear of wheat she carried and held it at her breast the way a mother lifts an infant when a crowd grows rough. In that gesture, the Greeks understood her mind completely. She would carry one final proof of what had been good. She would take it where hands could not bruise it. She would leave the rest to us. The birds lost their nerve and did not follow. Dogs lay in the shade and watched her pass with their heads down on their paws. Night gathered around her in a clean ring. The road seemed to rise as if it had been a ramp the whole time and no one had noticed. She did not fly. She did not run. She stepped from hill to hill the way a careful farmer steps across irrigation channels with a brimming bucket never spilling a drop. Below her, the small lights of farms spread out like a net. At the edges of those lights, men argued about a boundary. Again, the same harsh words spoken with the same heat. She did not turn back. The sky met her without ceremony. A place opened and held its shape. The maiden stood in that place and did not waver. The ear of wheat, her last token of a world that could be fair, shone like a coal in a dead fire. The Greeks gave that star a name that fit the thing itself, Spica, the ear of grain. A single bright witness carried upward to swear that order had once lived on the ground. Down below the empty space she left, filled with other louder voices, law kept going because men need it, even when they hate it. But it became a colder, more bureaucratic thing. Magistrates learned to keep meticulous notes because memory grows partisan. Contracts grew longer. Witness lists took a page and a half. Judges sent for extra benches. The habit of weighing returned, but now it was done with tools because the hand that had weighed by instinct was gone. People missed her most in the moments with no rule book. A fist fight in a lane where neither man remembers the first insult. A widow who cannot pay and must choose between shame and hunger. A small theft that will ruin a boy if punished and encourage a gang if ignored. The sky carries her image over all of this, like a roof tile that will not crack. Those who look up see the steady lamp of Spica and feel something loosen in their throat. Some take it as permission to try again in the morning. Some take it as a warning to stop before a sentence goes too far. The same pin of light serves both. Virgo reclines along the ecliptic with her gift across her lap, neither striding nor threatening, simply watching. Her posture is a silent lesson, a piece of civic curriculum conducted in starlight. She told them that the best guardian of a city is a habit that lives in ordinary hands. Sweep the threshold. Keep the measure fair. Let the voice that has less coin speak first. Put the knife away before you are tired. These are small commandments that ask for no temple and need no priest. A constellation can carry them across harvests and across wars. It asks only that someone point and say the names in order. Maiden, ear of wheat, justice, watching from above because she could not keep her footing below. Libra, the measured balance and the scorpion's claw. We leave the solemn, watchful gaze of Virgo and arrive at a moment of perfect, clean equilibrium. The heat of high summer has begun to soften. The air at dusk carries the smell of wine presses and wet stone from the first autumn rains. The vintage runs in courtyards. Donkeys stand with patient ears while skins are lifted and tied. Markets swell with grain measured into sacks and grapes stacked in shallow baskets. And at this precise moment, the sun crosses the celestial equator. Day and night are of equal length. The year steadies itself on a pivot. And into this balanced, measured silence steps Libra the scales. But here's the first twist. The scales are a latecomer. The Greeks first knew this scatter of stars as chelae, the claws. They were the pincers of the scorpion who will meet properly next. The old Arabic names for its two brightest stars, Zuban-el-Ganubi and Zuban-e-Shamali, still mean the southern claw and the northern claw. A hint carved right into the sky that the scorpion once held this whole span. The Romans, that ruthlessly practical people who loved a calendar that bound fieldwork to exact days and laws with lines that did not wiggle, claimed the group for themselves. They gave it a Latin name that matched their civic soul, Libra, the scales. It suited them. This was a people who stamped their authority into metal coins and sent them from hand to hand. The constellation became the emblem of balance in the most literal sense, long before poets made it a figure for fair dealing. Scales hung in stalls on every street where figs and oil were sold. Scales were painted on the walls of tribunals. Scales were carved into the right hands of goddesses in stone. When a Roman citizen looked up and saw the twin lights of Libra lift together at evening, they saw the most fundamental tool of their civilization, the instrument that kept markets honest and punishments fair, reflected back to them from a colder and safer height. The idea, of course, was ancient long before Rome. On clay tablets, pressed in cities beside the Euphrates, Babylonian scribes drew a figure that scholars later read as a balance. The sky over Babylon held a sign for weighing. It stood near the point where the sun turned the year into autumn. Temple officials would check their bronze standard weights and measures, while these same stars repeated the instruction above their heads. Keep the pans even. Do not cheat the hungry. The world carried that simple lesson west with merchants, captives, and envoys, and it stuck. When a Roman magistrate sat under an awning to judge a case that began with a short measure of grain, he did so in a tradition older than his city's walls. The stars setting over his shoulder were already charged with that history. Astronomers cataloged Libra with a care that makes the old star manuals feel alive. Its stars are not loud. They don't draw a crowd the way the lion or the archer does. They reward patience, and that is the core of their meaning. Yet the sky, in its quiet way, never lets you forget the layers. The old memory of the claws is preserved in those ancient names Zuben-el-Ganubi and Zuben-e-Shamali. The night holds both histories at once without confusion. That's how cultures often grow. A people inherits a figure as part of a larger beast. Another people redraws the lines, but keeps the old names at the corners, like labels for a past that remains real. The Greeks placed the scales in the sky between Virgo, the justice that withdrew, and Scorpio, the vengeance that waits. The sequence itself is a silent lesson. First, keep the measure. Then remember the sting that waits for arrogance. When the sun stepped into Libra cities, mark the date with small, useful actions. Weights and measures were tested against public standards in the forum. Official scales were rinsed and blessed with a pinch of salt. Debts were counted, and where mercy allowed, renegotiated or rolled forward. Courts made an effort to clear old cases before winter closed the roads. Scribes sharpened their reeds and began new ledgers with a fresh hand. The scales overhead looked on, while people chose balance over heat practice, over noise. It's not a choice that produces great songs. It produces a year that holds together. For sailors, Libra was a sign for timing, not direction. Its stars weren't the bright guides others were, yet pilots watched for them. The Etesian winds that ruled the high summer began to ease. The breakers on stony coves changed their note. Libra's posture at dusk told a seasoned crew what the fish had already begun to feel in their bones. A last run was safe this week, another would be foolish. In that way, the constellation governed by restraint and a practical kind of wisdom. The men who listened kept their ships. The men who ignored the signal came home under a sail patched in the bow, or did not come home at all. And in the quiet of a study, a writer who loved order might glance at Libra when searching for an image to steady the mind. A beam that will stand straight if you take care. Two trays that punish greed without a single word. The line across the middle that refuses to tilt for a shouted plea or a hidden bribe. In the art of law-giving, this image proved stronger than speeches. Themis and Dike, the spirits of law and justice, were often shown with scales because the device said their names in clear strokes a child could copy. So the sky speaks in plain terms. It offers no creature, no weapon, just two pans hanging from a beam. A simple device given the honor of a sign. Its message is timeless. Measure this season. Balance the account. Give the day and the night the same respect. And when the bull of winter stirs on distant hills, the image remains above the roofs, two quiet pans, holding still, in the wind, an instrument promoted to the heavens so that no one could ever say they forgot what fairness looked like. Scorpio, the sting of pride, and the hunter's fall. Now, we arrive at the sign that needs no introduction, the one whose very name hisses with a promise of a sharp and sudden end. We're stepping into the territory of Scorpio, and it rises from the southern horizon like something remembered before language itself. A hooked tail climbs first, a menacing curve against the dark. Then the body follows thick with stars. And low in the south, its heart burns a steady, ominous red coal that sailors learned instantly and farmers pointed out to their sons. This is Antares, the rival of Mars, a name that tells you everything about how it looks when the air is clear and the night is warm enough to carry whispers across fields. The scorpion takes shape as your eyes adjust. A brow forms. Claws stretch westward. The tail bends tight and ends in a sting named shaula, a word that tastes of sand and heat. This is one of the few constellations that needs no help from the imagination. The figure is just there, a primal silhouette understood by desert people and island people alike. The Greeks, of course, gave it a story fitted to its terrifying weight. And that story was drawn to it by the stubborn gravity of a man who never measured the reach of his words, Orion. Orion was a giant, a hunter who crossed seas in the stride of a single rumor. He was the archetype of raw, unchecked masculinity, and he boasted that he would clear the world of every beast. Some versions add a darker shade that he laid hands on what should never be touched, turning desire into an assault. The island of Chios remembers him for a king's errand that soured into violence when a promised bride was withheld. Artemis, the virgin huntress, appears in other tellings, sometimes his companion, sometimes his judge. But in the most visceral version, the earth herself, Gaia, heard his boast, and she answered without speech. She didn't send a god or a spirit. She sent something from the ground, a scorpion, a creature that carries its weapon behind it and does not announce its angle until the last step. The meeting reads, like a line carved in stone. Orion strides across a flat country, at noon, the heat lifting in sheets from the ground. The scorpion comes from a shadow, cast by nothing more than a rock. It is small beside him until it is close. Then the weapon matters more than the measure of the bodies. A quick arc, a puncture that looks like an accident and feels like fire under the skin. The giant turns stamps, fails to find the thing that has already done enough. The poison begins its slow, meticulous work. In other verses, the creature drives him toward water, and he wades in until the surface closes over his head. Apollo's trickery enters at the edges here, a brother setting a test for his sister Artemis, asking her to shoot at a dark speck in the sea. Her arrow lands true. Orion sinks. However, the line is written. The end keeps faith with the same idea. A man who claimed the right to end all wild lives becomes the example that warns against claims without measure. The gods placed their witnesses where no hand could move them again. Orion received a place among the winter stars, a belt of 3 lights drawing the eye, a sword hanging beneath, dogs running at his heels. And far away across the river of the sky, the scorpion took the months he cannot touch. Their separation is a perfect, terrifying geometry of warning. One rises as the other sets. Pride draws its answer from the very ground. The answer waits patient and strikes when the hour returns. Ancient mouths kept both versions of the quarrel. The one where Gaia sends the scorpion because a man threatens the natural order. The one where Artemis executes justice. The point was never which god carried the message, but that the ground answered. A low instrument, a quiet instrument, an instrument that doesn't need to make a sound to be understood. Rural altars often bore small scorpions carved in relief for this reason. A house in the backcountry understands the danger of hands that forget themselves. A mother would point to the shape in the sky and tell her child 2 sentences meant to last a lifetime. Do not boast against the world. Do not mistake speed for safety. Scorpio owns the deep parts of summer where sleep grows thin and dogs bark at nothing, and the countryside waits for a wind that will not come. In those hours, the red heart of Aries hangs over the roofs and turns whole towns into listeners. Its authority is that of a clock hand. Its heliacal rising, when it first returns to the dawn sky after being hidden by the sun's glare, told entire communities the worst heat was on its way. It was a signal to check wine presses, patch roofs, and count jars with care, because a miscount after harvest cost less than a miscount before. Sailors learned prudence from it. An embarkation that made sense in the weeks of the twins could sink a hull in the weeks of the scorpion. Good practice rests in that kind of distinction, and the sky repeats the instruction until it becomes second nature. Reapers working under Antares kept a tighter line when binding sheaves, because the air drank sweat faster than wells could satisfy a throat. Captains shifted watches so the midday sun found fewer men on deck. Garrison commanders shortened patrols, a concession to heat that preserved horses and tempers. The constellation did its work simply by being itself. It didn't offer omens for individual fates. It spoke to the whole. Keep to shade in the worst hours. Cut earlier than pride would like. Tie bundles with more care than last year. The same voice carried to soldiers on border posts and to crews in anchorages where the swell never sleeps. It told them to think twice before chasing a quarrel into open country. To put the weight on prudence until the weather changed. So the Greeks let the scorpion hold its ground across from the hunter, and they kept telling the story in full light. The image traveled from vase to wall to coin to the sky above the speaker's head. It has never lost the edge that made it valuable. A creature drawn with economy. A sting that bends like a question you cannot refuse to answer. A red heart set at the center to remind the strong that the world contains forces that do not care who wears the crown or carries the club. Sagittarius, the archer at the edge of the world. From the venomous grounded threat of the scorpion, we now draw our bow and aim our gaze higher to the very edge of the world as the ancients knew it. We're entering the realm of Sagittarius the archer, and the air here is different. It's thinner, filled with the light of 1 billion distant suns. This figure doesn't just occupy the sky. It stands sentry at the frontier of the cosmos, his arrow forever trained on the heart of the danger we just left behind. The eye finds the bow, first a perfect geometric curve of stars against the profound black. Then an arm drawing the string taut with potential energy. Then a body that seems half man, half swift creature planted in darkness, with the poise of someone who already knows where the arrow will land. The whole scene is a single silent sentence, written in light. An archer stands on the bank of the Star River, the Milky Way, and holds a threat at bay. Storytellers gave this vigilant guardian a name and a home among living hills. They spoke of Crotus, a strange and wild satyr who grew up on Mount Helicon under the care of the Muses. While the daughters of memory sang, he kept the slopes quiet. He judged the stir in the brush before he saw it. He was the ultimate bodyguard, a creature of instinct who understood song and danger in the same breath. And he invented a way to mark delight that the world now takes for granted. He brought his hands together sharply, so the air answered back. The muses called it praise. Crotus called it thanks. When he sat at the edge of a spring and listened to hymns, he kept one eye on the tree line, counting the heartbeats it would take to stand, knock draw, and change the mind of any shape that wandered too close. The muses, grateful for a guardian who understood their worth, asked Zeus to honor him. The god answered by fixing Crotus in the sky, with a bow forever drawn his shaggy legs and hooves, given by artists to show his speed and rustic blood. But another heavier story bleeds into the archer's outline. The Greeks were never ones to keep their myths clean. The figure of Chiron, the wise, sorrowful centaur mentor to Achilles, Jason, and Asclepius, casts a long shadow here. They remembered his terrible wound, a poisoned arrow loosed by his own friend Heracles that lodged in his leg. A lesson in fallibility and pain deeper than any he had taught with words. They remembered the strange bargain that followed, where the immortal centaur chose to yield his endless days so that Prometheus could be freed from his rock. Wisdom, skill, and a justice learned in pain are hard qualities to contain in one figure, so the archer of the Zodiac gets to carry all of it. An arrow drawn against the dark can serve as a sign for the kind of knowledge that acts without noise. The Greeks read the archer's posture against the scorpion behind him and found profound comfort in the celestial geometry. The line from the arrow's notch through the shaft points unerringly toward Antares, the red heart of the scorpion. It's a reminder that true courage sometimes lives in the silent, focused moment before release. The breath held the aim checked, the intention crystallized. Ancient star writers traced the bow with names that sailed into later ages. Caus Borealis, Caus Media, Caus Australis, marking the upper limb, the bend, and the lower limb. The arrowhead glints at Alnassal, and the hand finds its grip by Nunki, a bright mark, whose ancient name was lost to time, but whose steady light was a trusted friend to pilots. Albalda sits on the archer's shoulder like a small, proud flash. This constellation stands where the Milky Way is at its thickest, a river of crushed diamond dust spilled across the sky. On clear nights, a shepherd lying on his back could see darkness gouged with brightness there and feel an old reverence for the depth of it all. The ecliptic runs through this same glorious mess, and planets step past the archer's arm in slow, solemn procession, evening after evening, like travelers asking leave to cross a heavily guarded bridge. For sailors, the arc of the bow itself became an instruction, a curve to set against the sea, to keep bearings while running along familiar summer coasts. When the archer clears the eastern roofs in the hours after sunset, the high summer night has reached that stretch when crickets keep their chorus and towns grow still. Men lean on parapets and count the main lights without speaking. A boy on a flat roof learns to match star to star by watching the shaft climb and the scorpion's tail sink. And in the exercise, his patience holds a little longer than it did last week. The figure teaches without a voice. It invites the quiet that turns skill into instinct. The season under this sign trains temper as much as muscle. The heat has pared speech down to what is necessary. Work gets done because men pace themselves. The bow teaches the same economy of motion. Lift anchor, draw through the back. Let the shoulders carry the weight so the hand can remain calm. Do it again after a drink of water. The sky turning above a field of stubble makes these motions feel older than any single body. A boy learns to pull a short bow behind a sheepfold at dusk, hearing crickets as he concentrates on keeping his elbow high. A veteran who has set down weapons for years looks south from a roof and feels his shoulder blades remember the line of a good shot. Neither speaks. The figure holds their attention until the arrowhead brightens and the scorpion's tail sinks another finger toward the west. The Greeks, who loved stories, but also loved order, left the archer there to keep keep an invitation open for any pair of eyes willing to wait until the bow becomes visible in full. And the arrow finally points with certainty into the dark, a promise that someone is always watching the edge of things. Capricorn, the goatfish, and the great escape. The air changes now. The thick, starry soup of the Milky Way begins to thin overhead, and the year itself feels like it's running out of light. We've reached Capricorn, and it rises not with a roar or a drawn bow, but with a quiet, stubborn wedge of faint stars climbing from the southern horizon. This isn't a sign of glorious power. It's a sign of survival. Primal, pragmatic, and willing to do whatever it takes to see the sun rise again. Evening brings a clear cold that sharpens every sound. Roof tiles click as they settle. From the south, that broken triangle of light, the sea goat makes its ascent. Old keepers of the sky drew it as a creature with the forepart of a goat, a squared, stubborn jaw, and the hind part falling away into the coils of a fish. Sailors learned its outline by habit. Farmers learned it by the season. For generations of Greek and Roman time, the sun reached its lowest, weakest noon in these stars. This was the winter solstice, the turning point so steady and crucial that geographers named a whole band of the Earth after it, the Tropic of Capricorn. It's a stitched scar on our maps, a reminder that the solstice once stood there, and that we humans will keep a name long after the heavens themselves have slowly shifted away from it. This is the goat that enters the river, and it keeps watch over this pause in the light, over the deep inward work that winter demands. Count the jars again, seal the lids, mend the net, write the tally with a careful hand before the new year empties it with fresh need. Capricorn is the patron saint of preparation, and its story begins with the closest thing the gods ever faced to total annihilation. Typhoeus, a monster born from the earth itself, rose up. He was a mountain torn loose and given legs a forest of snakes for hair, a voice that could break stone. When he climbed the skyline, the gods of Olympus, who ruled by effortless gestures, felt their hands go light with pure terror. Olympus emptied in a panicked rush as they scrambled to save their lives, scattering their tracks by transforming into animals. Zeus became an eagle. Apollo became a hawk. Dionysus turned into a goat. It was a divine rout, a complete systemic collapse. And this is where our hero, or rather our survivor, comes in. Pan, the god of the wild places, whose goat-legged form and playful pipes had wrung laughter from the hills of Arcadia, reached the water's edge with the pressure of the monster's breath hot on his back. He plunged into the Nile River to escape. And in that desperate splashing leap, his body learned a new shape to answer the need of the hour. From the waist up, he kept his goatish strength, the horned head, the shaggy neck, the chest built for a shout. From the waist down, he learned the river's craft. A tail scaled and quick a swimmer's engine, a line through the current that left no wake. In a single movement, he became the sea goat, a hybrid guardian fit for banks and eddies where danger hunts. But the story isn't over. In the chaos, Typhoeus managed to strike Zeus down, tearing the tendons from his hands and legs, the very sources of his power, and hiding them in a cave guarded by a dragon-headed monster. The king of the gods was rendered as weak as a child. The world was hanging in the balance. And who came to the rescue? The newly transformed Pan, or his Roman counterpart Saturn, and the ever-resourceful Hermes. Moving with a thief's quiet through the reeds, they located the cave, outwitted the guard, and stole back the divine tendons. Zeus was made whole again, rose with a thunderous shout, and finally defeated Typhoeus with lightning. In the peace that followed, Zeus set the sea goat among the stars to honor the courage of a god who didn't stand and fight, but who adapted, who fled smartly, and whose cleverness in the face of overwhelming force, made the victory possible. It was a rescue made by water sense and a body willing to wear two natures at once. This wasn't just a Greek story. The image is ancient. On Babylonian tablets, the creature is called Suhurmashu, the goatfish pressed into clay in an age when the sky was a round tablet and the year was a braid of seasons. The Greeks gave this old image fresh work in a crisis they could recite at the hearth. The Romans then let the sea goat keep his place at the hinge of winter, peopling the month with the festival of Saturnalia, a week of feasting role reversal and merry chaos that acknowledged the darkness outside before the orderly, predictable work of the new year could begin. The stars of Capricorn themselves have a spare, humble grammar. At the tail shines Deneb Algidi, the tail of the goat, a steady white mark. Near the head, Algidi and Dabi form a double star like a pair of horns set side by side. They are faint. They reward patience. They are symbols for those who understand that survival isn't about brilliance. It's about endurance. The message of Capricorn is whispered, not shouted. Endure. Prepare. Change shape when the river leaves its banks. Hold to the rock when the water recedes. It's a lesson that traveled well, from clay ledgers to temple friezes to a pilot's night watch. A goat that learned to swim brought tendons back to the hand that throws thunder. And that is a truth worth remembering. Aquarius, the stolen cupbearer, and the gift of rain. The season turns, and the clear, sharp cold of Capricorn gives way to the soaking promise of rain. The air grows heavy, the light softens, and the sky prepares to open. We have reached Aquarius the water bearer, and his story begins not in the chaos of a monster's attack, but in the breathtaking quiet beauty of a single boy on a green slope of Mount Ida. His name was Ganymede, son of King Tros, the founder of Troy. And his beauty wasn't just a fact, it was an event. It moved through the countryside like a rumor that did not fade with distance. He was a shepherd, walking barefoot along the ridges, carrying a staff cut from a young ash tree. Dogs loped at his heels and stopped when he stopped, as if they understood their master could read the wind by listening to the flight of a bee. The sky above him was a blue that seemed to promise mercy. He looked up with the unguarded gaze of someone who had not yet learned that the gods prefer surprise. Zeus saw him from a height that made kingdoms look like coins scattered on a floor. And desire, as it always does in these stories, rewrote the rules in a single stroke. The king of the gods chose a shape of swift, terrifying grace, a massive eagle one, whose shadow made the hawks of Ida veer away in instinctive fear. The air smelled of thyme and sheep. Ganymede squinted into the sun because the light seemed to fold and then darken, as if a cloud had arrived without a whisper of warning, then the grip. Wings gathered the boy from the ground, powerful talons locking under his arms, lifting and not letting go. His staff and sandals fell into the grass. The dogs reared and barked, their barks growing faint and small as the world pulled away beneath him. The flight was a long, terrifying thought spoken slowly. Ganymede did not cry out. He stared at the feathers as if his mind could understand this pain by counting the small, perfect things that carried it. Fields became a patchwork quilt. Rivers turned into silvery threads. The Aegean Sea lifted toward them like a vast plate of hammered metal held at a tilt. He felt the dizzying, nauseating lurch of the world receding the distance between earth and sky, changing at a speed that made his stomach argue with his head. Fear and awe took turns behind his ribs. He had time to notice the immense strength in the bird's neck, the steady, relentless beat of its wings. He had time to understand he had left the world he knew with no road back. Olympus met him without gates or guards. It was a place where the weather itself waited to be told what to do. Columns shone as if washed in a perpetual gentle rain. Marble floors drank sunlight and gave it back as a soft glow underfoot. The gods looked up from their cup's nectar that shone like the inside of a shell when the eagle entered the hall. The bird set the swaying boy on his feet. And then Zeus stood before him, his eyes carrying the same threat and promise as a storm that has chosen a single valley. Hermes appeared as he always did when the air changed and matters required a messenger who knew which words to keep and which to say. Hera watched from her throne with a stillness that said she understood what had been taken and deeply disapproved of the manner of the taking. Ganymede, a mortal child, learned what it meant to serve immortals. He was given a basin of water that smelled of laurel to wash the hands of gods who did not age. He carried the jug of nectar. He poured with a motion so calm and precise that even Aries lowered his voice when the boy passed. In some tellings, he replaced Hebe, the goddess of youth, as cupbearer. In others, he served beside her. The detail changes, but the central haunting image remains a mortal child, moving among divine chairs, with a vessel that never empties, and a face that never shows fear. The cup he lifted is the same cup that would become a stream of light in the sky. The posture he learned in that hall is the posture the constellation holds forever, but the world below asked for an answer. A king in Dardania counted the days and did not see his son return with the flock. Tros stood at the edge of a field at sundown and watched the dogs arrive alone. The cry that left his mouth was the cry every parent knows in the moment before facts arrive. Zeus, perhaps feeling a rare pang of something resembling guilt, did not leave the wound open. He sent Hermes down with gifts to soften the blow, a pair of immortal horses that could run over sea foam without sinking, or a twisting living vine of solid gold that bore fruit. The versions differ, which is how memory works when pain is old. The point survives. The father received proof that his loss had been honored by a power he could not refuse. He bowed his head. He learned that grief does not end when it is paid for. It just learns to sit at the table without speaking. The Greeks did not forget the violence of the ascent, but they also could not deny the gift that came from it. Aquarius became the youth who pours water from a jar into a river that already knows where it is going. When the sun walks this section of the ecliptic in the deep winter months, the rainy storms cross the Mediterranean. This is when the jars in the sky seem to spill and the world below drinks. Farmers watch their channels fill and take the pulse of the year in the sound of water moving through dry stone. Sailors mark the season as useful, even if its storms are dangerous. They know the weeks when the west will send long bands of cloud and a sea knocked into short, steep waves that break oars and patience. The constellation itself is vast and faint, a sprawling pattern that rewards a patient eye. Its stars carry names that wandered west from ancient tongues, full of a hopeful fortune. Sadal Melik, the lucky one of the king, and Sadal Sud, the luckiest of the lucky. A quick shower of meteors, the Delta Aquarids, arrives from this region each year in late summer. Brief lines sketching the dark as if the water bearer is practicing his pour. He doesn't speak in riddles. He simply pours. The world below learns to receive and to plan. A mason widens a channel before the storm season. A magistrate orders grain moved inland from a low warehouse before the winter tides. When Aquarius climbs to the meridian on a clear night in the heart of winter, the towns below offer small signs that the figure has done its work. Laundry hung at midday dries by lamplight. Hearths burn low so smoke won't hang heavy under roof beams. A child counts the stars at the rim of the jar. A mother listens to water run in a channel behind the house. a father checks a roof pot and tips it so the basin won't overflow. Above them, the youth continues his motion with the patience that only the sky can manage. One steady arm, one shining cup, a duty that keeps its shape through storms and years, forever pouring out the story of a beautiful boy who was stolen from a green hill and made to serve the heavens. Pisces, the chord of survival. We end where we began, at the water's edge. But this is not the sunny shore of a Phoenician meadow. This is a riverbank that feels older than maps a place where the air carries the smell of cold stone and wet reeds, and a wide dark river slides past with a hush that swallows the sound of footsteps. The world is coming apart. Typhoeus, the monstrous son of Gaia, has risen from the earth, and the very ground seems to breathe like a lung buried beneath it. The gods have fled in a panic of animal transformations, and it is here that we find the last act of our celestial drama, the origin of Pisces the fishes. This is not a story of conquest or abduction. It is a story of a mother, her child, and a length of cord. Aphrodite, the goddess of love, and her son Eros, the god of desire, reached the bank of the great Euphrates River. The noise of the approaching monster was a pressure in the air, a vibration that promised annihilation. Ahead of them lay the water, offering escape, but also a risk that mirrored the danger on land. Aphrodite in this moment was not a distant idealized symbol. She was a mother, a child on her hip, his small arms clinging to her neck, his other hand pressed to the quiver of arrows that seemed far too large for his small body. She knelt at the lip of the river, her mind weighing choices in a single terrified breath. Then, with a practicality that only love can summon, she pulled a length of cord from her girdle. It was simple stuff. Twisted fibers that a fisherman would call good enough, the kind of thing you'd use to tie a bundle or mend a net. She tied one end around Eros's small wrist and the other around her own. The knot was plain and strong. It carried the one thought that matters most when the world tears itself apart. We will not lose each other. She drew a breath and stepped forward. The river, shockingly cold, closed over her calves, her hips, her shoulders, and then a change moved through their bodies with the plain, unstoppable authority of a survival act. Flesh learned water. Her legs softened, melding into a single powerful line that could flex against the current. Ankles turned to a broad, sweeping tail. Her arms kept their reach for her child. His small feet flashed once and then folded into a swimmer's delicate fin. The cord between them pulled taut. They went under, and the river took them the way a road takes a rider who knows the turnings. Some versions say two fish rose from the depths at that moment, shouldering the transformed goddess and god through the first strongest pull of the current. These creatures had no fear of monsters in the air. They knew their own element and worked without a sound, carrying their divine passengers in the seam where surface chatter gives way to the deep, silent flow. They angled toward a bend where the bank leaned low and safe. The first gulp of air after that long submerged hold tasted of clay and willow bark. Eros coughed, sputtering. Aphrodite gathered him against her shoulder and felt the cord tug with the weight of the water still running from their bodies. When she looked back at the channel, she saw the tails of their rescuers cutting upstream, a last flash of help before they vanished into the gloom. Gratitude in that moment did not require words. She fixed the image of the rescue with the intensity of someone who understands a debt that can never be fully repaid. When the roads were safe again, and the noise of Typhon lived only where the earth remembers its injuries, the sky received its final gift from that night of terror, two fishes bound together by a ribbon that crosses the void in a quiet, eternal arc. There is no throne here, no weapon, just the shape of a promise kept with simple cord and shared breath. The western fish rests near the great square of Pegasus, in a small, delicate ring of stars the old watchers called the circlet. The eastern fish lifts its head toward the chain of stars that forms the constellation Andromeda, and between them runs the band that binds them, the silvery cord of starlight. At its center, a single star marks the memory of the knot, Alresha, the cord, a name carried from ancient caravan routes to harbors and finally into the books of astronomers. Pisces is a constellation that wears its faintness like a decision. It yields no roar to the eye. It asks for patience and rewards it with a map older than most cities. A sailor who can trace its path from the circlet along the cord to Alresha and up to the eastern fish can find a harbor mouth in a fog that only the sea understands. A farmer who can find it from a field path can tell his daughter how to read the sky when the frogs begin their drumming in the ditches, the first sign that the long turn toward spring has begun. This is the sign that holds the vernal equinox, the point where the sun crosses the celestial equator on its way north, and day finally wins its long struggle against night. The Greeks discovered that this first point of Aries had slowly drifted into the fishes, a silent shift of the cosmos that they recorded with meticulous, humble precision. The sky keeps its shapes, but the frame moves. Spring now begins under the sign of the two-tide fish. Their season lives in the last stretch of winter. Streets shine after rain. Roofs drip all afternoon. Fishermen sit with awls and wax thread, mending tears in their nets, while children watch unusually quiet. In markets, the fish stalls carry sardines with silver flanks and small eels that curl like ropes, forgetting their stiffness. Women buy salt. Boys carry baskets. The light lasts one finger width longer than it did the week before. A city feels the world lean toward warmth, while the fishes look down their ribbons stretched tight from mouth to mouth. The core of the story resists any attempt to pretty it up. It is clean and brutal and beautiful. A woman and a child faced a monster and chose the river together. They made sure they would not lose each other in the fast, cold water. Help came from the element they had chosen to trust, and that help left no name and asked for no shrine. The gift to the sky was the picture of that act, so that no one could ever claim to have forgotten it. Tie the lives that must not be separated. Keep the thread visible. Move with the current when the bank gives way, and climb out together when the bend allows it. The river of the sky runs through these waters between the water bearer and the ram. The cord still holds. The wheel turns from myth to calendar. We've walked through 12 individual tales each, a frozen moment of crisis or transformation, pinned to the black vault of the night. But to the ancients, these signs were never just isolated myths. They were chapters in a grand revolving epic, a massive celestial calendar, a compass, and a cosmic scrapbook, all woven into one. This is the story of the Zodiac itself, the wheel that turns above us, and how this odd mixture of animals, objects, and gods came to govern the imagination of the ancient world. The term Zodiac comes from the ancient Greek Zodiakos Kyklos, meaning circle of little animals. It's a charming name until you actually look at the lineup and realize how misleading it is. Yes, there's a ram, a bull, a lion, a crab, a scorpion, and 2 fish. But there's also a set of scales, a virgin, a water pourer, a goatfish hybrid, a centaur with a bow, and a pair of twins. This celestial ring is an odd mixture, and its origins stretch back far beyond the Greeks to the meticulous astronomer priests of Babylon in the first millennium before the Common Era. The Babylonians were the original architects. They charted the movements of the sun, moon, and planets, and noticed they all traveled along a specific highway in the sky, the path we call the ecliptic. They divided this path into 12 equal sections, each one named after a constellation that lived there. For them, these signs were primarily symbolic markers of time tied to their 12-month lunar calendar and the changing seasons of the agricultural year. It was a system of breathtaking practicality. The Greeks, never ones to leave a perfectly serviceable system, alone inherited this Babylonian framework and did what they did best. They rewrote it in their own dramatic God-filled idiom. They layered over the Babylonian precision a thick coat of divine intrigue. They saw the constellation of the scales not just as a seasonal marker for the autumnal equinox, but as the claws of the great Scorpion, or later, as the instrument of justice held by Virgo. They looked at the Babylonian Great One, a figure pouring water, and saw Ganymede, the beautiful cupbearer of Zeus. They took the goatfish and wove it into the story of Pan's desperate escape from Typhon. In doing so, they transformed a calendar into an anthology. The Zodiac became a collection of the greatest hits of Greek mythology, a divine drama playing out on a loop every year. It was equal parts almanac, epic poem, and moral guidebook. Aries rising in the spring wasn't just a signal to prepare the plow. It was a reminder of the golden ram's costly rescue. The appearance of Leo in the late summer night wasn't just a herald of the harvest. It was a lesson in the patience and raw strength required to defeat an invulnerable terror. This wheel in the sky was the ultimate shared cultural touchstone. A farmer in a field, a sailor on the wine-dark sea, a potter in Athens, and a merchant in Alexandria, they all looked up at the same stories. They used them to navigate, to know when to plant and when to reap, to feel connected to the gods and to the rhythms of the universe. The heliacal rising of a constellation, its first appearance in the dawn sky after a period of invisibility, was like a national holiday being announced by the cosmos itself. The stories were everywhere. They were painted on the curves of drinking cups, so a symposiast could gaze at Perseus or Orion as he drank his wine. They were stamped onto coins, sending mythic messages about power and stability from hand to hand in every market. They were laid in intricate mosaics on the floors of villas, a rich man's universe beneath his feet. They were carved into the stone of temples, linking human worship to the cosmic order. This is what we've lost. When we look up today, we might see Orion, or we might just see a random scatter of stars. But to look up and see the Zodiac, as the ancients did, to see the full wheel, was to see a mirror. It reflected their best and worst selves, their capacity for loyalty, like the twins, their resilience, like the sea goat, their justice, like the scales, their hubris, like the scorpion. The sky was not a cold, remote place. It was a living, breathing teaching presence. It was a battlefield memorial, a love letter, and a gallery of betrayals and last stands spinning gently above our heads every single night. The language of the stars, more than stories. We've traced the grand myths and the cosmic clockwork, but to truly understand the Zodiac, we must come down from the philosophical heights and step into the dirt, the sea spray, and the dust of the marketplace. For the ancient Greek, Babylonian, or Roman, these constellations were not abstract ideas. They were the living, breathing infrastructure of daily life. They were the GPS, the weather channel, the farmer's almanac, and the moral compass, all written in a language of light that everyone could read. For the sailor, clinging to the rail of a merchant vessel in the pitch-black Aegean, the stars were a literal lifeline. He didn't need to know the story of Zeus and Europa to use Taurus. He needed to know that when the red eye of Aldebaran cleared a certain point on the mast, he was on course for Crete. The twins, Castor and Pollux, were more than brothers. They were the eerie blue St. Elmo's fire that crackled on the spars, In a storm, a physical sign that the saviors of sailors had arrived to guide them home. To see them was to feel a shift from sheer terror to desperate hope. The sky was a map, and every bright star was a coastal landmark in a sea of darkness. On land, the rhythm was slower, but just as precise. A farmer didn't just see Virgo, he felt her. Her appearance in the sky coincided with the intense, back-breaking labor of the harvest. The bright star Spica, the ear of wheat in her hand, was a celestial signal that the time for reaping had come. He would look up at the maiden and know it was time to sharpen his sickle, to prepare the threshing floors, to ready the jars for grain. Leo's presence in the high summer night warned of the coming brutal heat, a reminder to work at dawn and rest at noon. The heavens dictated the tempo of his entire year, when to plant, when to harvest, when to mend tools, and wait for the rains. This celestial knowledge seeped into the most domestic of spaces. A woman teaching her daughter to bake might point to the steady balance of Libra in the autumn sky and say, "See, the scales are even. Your measures must be the same." A father, carving a toy, might glance at the determined figure of Sagittarius and remind his son about focus and pulling the bowstring true. The myths were a shared language used to teach children about loyalty, courage, justice, and the consequences of pride. The fate of boastful Orion laid low by the lowly Scorpion was a bedtime story and a warning. The Zodiac was also deeply personal. People felt a connection to the sign under which they were born, a concept that began to solidify in the Hellenistic period. It wasn't the detailed horoscopy of today, but a simpler, more symbolic link. A man born under Leo might be expected to possess a bold, regal nature. One born under pragmatic Capricorn might be seen as resilient and shrewd. The sky was a mirror, and in its 12-fold division, people began to see reflections of their own character and fate. This practical, intimate relationship with the cosmos is almost entirely lost to us now. Our calendars are on our phones. Our navigation comes from satellites. Our weather reports are from meteorologists. We've outsourced the sky. But for the ancients, the celestial dance was a direct dialogue. A hazy ring around the moon meant rain was coming. The specific angle of the Big Dipper's handle told the time of night. The sudden absence of a familiar star behind a season of cloud cover was a cause for anxiety. The constellations were the oldest, most reliable neighbors. They were the silent partners in every voyage, every planted field, every prayer offered for a safe journey or a healthy child. The stories of gods and monsters gave them meaning, but it was their utter dependability that gave them power. They were the one constant in a world of change, politics, and war. To look up and trace the Zodiac was to participate in a tradition that connected a Greek sailor, a Babylonian priest, and a Roman farmer across centuries. It was to feel the comfort of knowing your place, not just in your city or your field, but in the universe itself. The wheel turned, the stories repeated, and humanity below kept pace its daily life, forever entwined with the drama unfolding in the stars overhead, the shift precession, and the changing sky. We've seen how the Zodiac served as storybook, calendar, and compass. But there's one final profound layer to this ancient system, a discovery that introduced a note of deep, humbling mystery into humanity's relationship with the heavens. This is the story of the shift, the wobble, the slow drift that revealed the cosmos was not a fixed, perfect clockwork, but a moving target. This is the story of Precession. For centuries, the foundational premise of the celestial map was its permanence. The patterns etched in fire were eternal. The spring equinox, that moment of perfect balance between day and night, always occurred when the sun was positioned against the same starry backdrop, the constellation of Aries the Ram. This point was so crucial, it was given a formal name, the first point of Aries. It was the cornerstone of the calendar, the celestial starting gun for the new year. Then came Hipparchus of Nicaea, a Greek astronomer working in the 2nd century BCE. A meticulous man, he was comparing his own observations of the stars against older Babylonian records and those attributed to the earlier Greek astronomer Timocharis. As he cross-referenced the positions of key stars, he noticed something unsettling. They didn't quite match. The bright star Spica, the jewel in Virgo's wheat sheaf, was in a slightly different position relative to the equinox point than the old records indicated. It wasn't a mistake. The heavens themselves were out of alignment. Hipparchus had stumbled upon the phenomenon now known as the precession of the equinoxes. He discovered that Earth's axis, like a slowly spinning top, has a wobble. It traces a lazy circle in space over a cycle of approximately 26,000 years. This means that over centuries, the backdrop of stars against which the sun rises on the equinox gradually imperceptibly changes. The first point of Aries, the cornerstone of the entire system, was not fixed at all. It was drifting westward along the ecliptic at a rate of about 1 degree every 72 years. In Hipparchus's time, the sun was no longer truly in Aries at the spring equinox. It had already slipped into Pisces. The name was a ghost, a title kept alive by tradition long after the celestial reality had moved on. This was a revolutionary and deeply disorienting discovery. It meant the sky, the one thing that was supposed to be eternally constant, was in motion on a scale so vast it dwarfed human history. Empires would rise and fall, languages would be born and forgotten, and the stars would have barely shifted in their great slow dance. Yet what's remarkable is how this discovery did not shatter the system. Instead, it added a new layer of depth to it. The Greeks and the cultures that followed learned to hold two truths in their minds at once. They kept the tropical zodiac, the 12 equal signs named after the constellations and anchored to the solstices and equinoxes, which are Earth-based phenomena. This was their practical calendar, their farming guide, their navigational tool. Simultaneously, they acknowledged the sidereal zodiac, the actual, slowly drifting constellations themselves. They understood that the symbolic age of Aries had given way to the age of Pisces long before anyone had noticed. This duality speaks to a sophisticated intellectual flexibility. The myths and meanings attached to Aries didn't vanish just because the sun had physically moved on. The stories remained powerful even as the science behind their anchoring point evolved. This slow drift is the reason your astrological sign today likely doesn't match the constellation the sun was actually in on your birthday. A modern astrologer will say you're a Taurus, meaning the sun was in the tropical sign of Taurus. But if you look at the real sky, the sun was almost certainly passing through the constellation of Aries. The tropical signs and the sidereal constellations divorced each other over 2 millennia ago and have been slowly drifting further apart ever since. Precession is the ultimate lesson in perspective. It's the cosmos reminding us that our view is local, temporary, and subject to forces of unimaginable scale. The Greeks, with all their flaws, had the humility to record this truth. They didn't discard their myths. They simply learned that the frame around the picture was moving. The constellations themselves remain. We can still trace the ram, the bull, and the twins. Their stories are still there to be read. But thanks to Hipparchus, we understand they are not fixed pins on a celestial map. They are passengers on a slow, grand carousel, and our place among them is a fleeting moment in a cycle that measures time, not in years, but in millennia. The sky keeps its shapes, but the frame moves. And in that motion lies the deepest mystery of all. We end this journey as we began looking up. But the sky is different now. It is no longer a silent, static tapestry. It is a living archive, a slow-turning wheel of memory. We have walked through 12 gates, each one opening into a story of love, fierce sacrifice, and survival so powerful that the only fitting monument was the infinite itself. The Greeks and the cultures before them did not see the stars, as we often do today, as distant, impersonal fires. They saw a mirror. In the fierce, necessary boldness of Aries, they saw their own capacity for desperate leaps of faith. In the patient, crushing strength of Leo, they saw the resolve required to confront an invulnerable world. In the scales of Libra, they saw the delicate instrument of fairness that holds a society together. In the bound fishes of Pisces, they saw the simple, profound truth that our strongest tether is to each other. These are not clean stories. They are messy, human, and often tragic. They are about rescue that doesn't save everyone love, that manifests as possession loyalty that defies death itself, and obedience that is honored even in failure. The Zodiac is not a gallery of perfect heroes. It is a constellation of defining moments, many of them heartbreaking. That is its power. It doesn't offer easy answers. It offers reflection. This cosmic anthology served 1,000 practical purposes. It was a farmer's calendar, a sailor's map, a city's legal code written in light. But its deepest function was to answer the most human of urges, the need to find meaning in the chaos, to see our own lives reflected in the vastness above. By placing their best and worst stories in the heavens, the ancients created a permanent conversation between the earthly and the divine. Every time a shepherd pointed out the twins to his son, or a merchant noted the rise of the water-bearer and prepared for rain, they were reaffirming their place in a grand, ongoing narrative. The discovery of Precession, the slow wobble that makes the stars drift over millennia, did not break this system. It deepened it. It taught a profound lesson in humility, that our stories are permanent, but our vantage point is temporary. The frame moves. The first point of Aries is now in Pisces, and one day it will drift into Aquarius. The myths of the ram and the fishes remain true, even as the celestial stage beneath them slowly rotates. The stories are anchors in a cosmic sea that is never still. So the next time you find yourself under a clear, crisp night sky, try to see it as they did. Don't just see the hunter Orion. See the scorpion that forever chases him, a warning against pride etched in fire. Don't just see a bright star in the bull's eye. See the ghost of a moon-white bull carrying a terrified princess across the sea. Don't just see a faint smudge of light between the lion and the scales. See the crab that pinched a hero's ankle, and for its sheer doomed effort, was granted a place in the sky. The Zodiac is a battlefield memorial, a love letter, a gallery of betrayals and last stands. It is the proof that we have always been storytellers, and that the greatest canvas we could ever find was the universe itself. The wheel turns, the stories repeat, and we are still a part of them. Look up. The sky remembers everything.